Good afternoon. Welcome back to the B&H event space. You are tuned into another episode of Leica Stories. Today we're in conversation with Chrystofer Davis. A lot of you guys out there might know him as Dolo Photo. And if you don't know him, get familiar, like the old Clinton Sparks line. We're going to talk to Dolo today. I mean, we go way back. So this is a conversation that, we've had you on before, but we've never like just us talking shop, me getting a chance to dig into who you are as a person, as a photographer. So I want to thank you and welcome you to the show, Dolo.
Thank you, Derek, for just having me on. I think it's been about maybe 2 years since we last done this before. So, I'm really excited to get into conversation with you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it has been a long time. And like I said, we had business to handle before. It was educating the masses, but now is, a chance for you to get the platform to really talk about what you do. And the reason why we have you here is that you are, I don't throw this word around lightly, but the term living legend. I mean, you're a legend, man. You make a huge impact. And I think in a world full of influencers. I hate that word, but that's what people have become now. It's become content creators, it's become influencers. Everybody's just trying to put stuff out for the consumption of others. It's very rare that you see people creating for themselves, creating for honest, noble, genuine causes. And that's why I use that term living legend, because to me, there's not enough of you running around. So I just want to start right there. And what's been your whole take on photography and where we're at, and how has it been for you trying to stay genuine to what you do in a world that's not cut out for the person trying to do just that?
Well, first and foremost, thank you for that. I really appreciate that. I take that in. I'm not because many times people say, well, like, I love what you're doing, like you're the best photographer, and I kind of just like, no, I'm just doing me and whatnot. So like I said, I do appreciate that. But I mean, photography for me, it's always been, in my household. My dad wouldn't call himself a photographer, but I look at him as a photographer. He's always documenting the moments. Um, and for me, photography is just, it's just been a craft where I just feel liberated. I can just go out in the streets and, connect with people and, just document the everyday moments, especially in the city of Newark. And I feel as though that, it's my mission at this very moment to, continue to document the history and the stories that are there now because, who knows what the future holds. A lot of things change, sometimes people leave the city. So, it's just very important for me just to document, everything that's happening there now.
Yeah, and that's a great place to kind of kick this whole thing off. Is that I said it in the green room, and New York City has such a pull. And I feel like everybody that is in the tri-state area, everybody is not in New York in some way, shape, or form, kind of wants to be in New York. New York has it going on.
Mhm.
It's the greatest city in the world. But that doesn't mean it's the only city in the world, and that doesn't mean that if that should be the ultimate goal, is to just kind of stay in New York and try to become part of that. And I think that's what stands out to me most about you is you're right there in Newark. Nork for everybody out there. It's not, Newark is in Delaware, but you're so close to New York, and yet you haven't been drawn into that. Like, I gotta act like I'm from New York. I have to be part of New York. I have to make myself New York centric. You've really held it down for your city and put on and tried to put your city on the map any way possible. And I think that's awesome because Newark has been through a lot. And you've
Mhm.
seen over the decades, it's really just been a transformational city in so many ways. And you've kind of grabbed hold of that and become the voice of Newark through the creative movement.
Like I said, I appreciate that, and I just feel like for me, right? I've lived in Newark, all of my life essentially. And so I think the biggest drive for me and why I continue to, photograph Newark is because a lot of people they get their information, off the internet and sometimes, news outlets. And so with a lot of the conversations that people have about Newark, a lot of those things could, just be, somewhat inaccurate. And for me, um, I tend to, try to find the truth in everything, right, and show the truth of exactly what Newark is like. The people that are there, the history that's there, the things that are currently happening. Because if you look in the history books, when it comes down to New York photography, you can pull up what New York may have looked like from the perspective of a citizen there, in the 30s and the 40s. There are prominent photographers then, right, who are documenting the history that's happening there. And for me, it was always just, my goal to showcase that, showcase the issue that's happening there, and then continuing on, the legacy of some other newer photographers like John Mattery. I look up to him, as a documentary photographer in Newark, because he photographed, Newark during, a very turbulent time. So he photographed Newark, like post-rebellion, what was happening around there in Newark with the different riots and, the United States Reserve, Army, going into Newark and, trying to, relieve what was happening there. And so for me, I look to him as one of those photographers, and just continuing on what he was doing, just photographing everyday life in Newark, from 1968 to about 1972. So, when it comes down, to photographers like him, I just want to continue to just document Newark from the perspective of somebody who lives there.
And I think that's important. I mean, there's never been a time like now where everybody has a tool to tell their own story. Everybody's a documentarian in some regard. And even if you're
Mhm.
not a photographer per se, you have a camera and you're able to. I mean, we're seeing it now with everything that's going on around the world. You don't have to get your news from a big media news source. You can get your news, boots on the ground. And what you're saying about Newark, you don't have to take whatever the media spin is on Newark. You have photographers who are documenting it, who are from there, who are showing you another slice of life. And I think that's what's so important. That's why I have become such an evangelist for the power of photography. And I know we share this same kind of mantra of, everybody has a chance to tell their story. And I think with that, there's also a great responsibility to the photographer because, again, everybody has a chance to tell their story. So sometimes you might only have an image or a series of images to tell an entire story. That could be hard to do. So how have you kind of tried to stay true to yourself? I mean, I kind of want to go back to the where we're at in terms of social media and where we're at
Mhm.
now. It's a hard draw. And you've worked as a freelancer, you've worked in, the corporate side of photography. You get the attention that, influencers and all these online photographers are getting, but you've stayed yourself. You haven't changed. Your work, you wouldn't be on right now, man. I would have had to cut you off. I would have deleted your number out of my phone if you would have switched up. And I think that's one of the great things is that your work has been your work from when we first really connected years ago to now. It's all the same brand, and it's evolving, but it's all the same voice. So how have you stayed true to yourself?
Well, I mean, there's plenty of photographers and plenty of people who are doing different things that are online and showcasing that. They may be on YouTube or TikTok or any other social media. And so I just think for me, it's more about the internal dialogue that I'm having with myself as far as what feels authentic to me. And I move in a space where I want to be authentic in anything that I do. So if there's a particular trend that may be going on that may be getting a lot of traction, or brands are starting to look for these different things, or people are just gravitating to it. For me, it might not be my thing. So I have to pretty much have that internal dialogue with myself. Continuing to think about what is my actual purpose, being a photographer. And I think in this day and age, you know everybody's within like the content creator kind of bubble in a sense, right? um but I just really think that once you figure out your purpose and why exactly you're getting into this genre, I really feel like you can pave your own way, because photography is not a one size fits all kind of thing. Even when I'm talking to my students, I'm saying that even though I'm into documentary photography, street photography, that may not be your genre of choice. You may want to be a landscape photographer. You may want to do product photography. You may want to do beauty. So I think that when it comes down, staying true to yourself, you have to figure out what is your purpose. Like, what exactly are you doing this for? If you're doing this as a hobby, you want to get a feel for everything, that's totally fine as well. But the most important thing is that you stay true to yourself, and try not to take in a lot of inspiration from anywhere and try to emulate that. I mean, of course, when we're getting into photography, we're going to try to mimic things
We
that
all
we
go
may
through the
see.
phases.
We all go those. Yeah, like I said, I've been through that phase as well. But once you start to seek out what you're interested in, you're going to start studying photographers. You're going to start to figure out what was their purpose and what they're doing. And sometimes you may align that with yourself and figure out, okay, these are the stories that I want to tell, and what particular kind of way do I want to showcase that to the world.
And it's important. I think really what I'm grabbing from you is it is about yourself. It is about your growth and development as an individual outside of being a photographer,
Right.
because we grow, we learn, we experience different things, and these experiences shape us. And as it shapes us as a person, the photographer in us just kind of comes along for the ride. I want to go back to, you threw in the students there. And for those that don't know, Dolo is a teaching artist as well. You've taught college level. And I mean, honestly, you're constantly teaching and inspiring. I come across so many people in real life, online, that know you, know of your work. Whenever I hear, I met somebody recently at a photo walk, and he's like, "Yeah, from Newark," and I'm like, "Oh, you know Dolo?" Of course, man. He's like, it's like without question, you're out there and you're putting your mark. But in particular to these students, what have they taught you about photography, about life, you being an artist in general?
Right. So before I get into that, I do want to give you your flowers because um you know, from the first time that we did this, right? Where we had the lecture at, the previous, event space back at the store, the big flagship store at B&H. You gave me the opportunity to, lecture people, and I've definitely, grew from that, and I feel like that helped empower me become, a professor and to continue to go along within, the education realm when it comes down to photography. So I definitely want to thank you. Like I said, I appreciate you. When it comes down, to the students, definitely you learn a lot of patience. You understand different, people's different learning traits. So I teach at Montclair State, and I tend to, I know you're you're an alumni of there. It's crazy how I'm teaching there now, but just understanding, people's different like learning skills. Some people are more, audio, some people are more hands-on. Some people like to see, what exactly aperture, shutter speed, and ISO is. Um, and I definitely find out that, a lot of people have different unique stories that they want to, talk about within their photography, or they didn't understand that they can do much more within photography, right? Because oftentimes, when people come in my classroom, they have this one idea of what photography is rather than what it actually is. And so, as a professor, I'm guiding them, through this art, through this medium, and showing that, there is, some mathematics that are involved. It's a science, and if you were shooting film, then you'll be getting into a little bit more chemistry. But just understanding that people have their personal stories that they want to put out there. I've had students who may have wanted to do a photo project about maybe a medical condition that people are unaware of, that or unaware about, and how they want to showcase that through photography and what their day in the life is like. And there's some people who want to talk about, their heritage or their culture, or even somebody who they may have lost, or a particular family member that they want to honor through photography. Um, so I just think that, it's just really amazing what people can do once you place a camera in their hands, and you teach them how to utilize it and find their visual language to help, create these wonderful stories. Um, and even, on that particular note, I think about, my experience when my social studies teacher in high school gave me, his camera to go around, photograph, the students, the staff. because he's putting together a yearbook, and how freeing that feeling was for me, and how I'm continually chasing that feeling of just like freedom, just going out, photographing, and like the camera is just an excuse for you to be outside, to investigate.
Yeah, it's crazy how it's such a tool of expression. But when you learn to wield that tool or that weapon, depending on how you use it, it's freeing. And sometimes it just takes that one person to show you the light or show you how to you can take something and mold it in. Cause I know everybody comes in, it's like, I want to shoot musicians. I want to shoot fashion. And it's like, I feel like those are the two big things that everybody kind of dives in. And whatever your gateway drug is, I'll take it and I'll spin it into something that, hey, you can do this. You can
Right.
host a YouTube series on the B&H event space Monday through Thursday, free education for the masses. Now, let me stop. But really, you can do like this. This is what worked for me, something that's photocentric, and I'm not burning myself out because the freelance life wasn't for me. But you've been able to take your gift and pass it on. And I think that is the greatest gift that somebody can pass on to somebody is the gift to take what you see and teach somebody to see and take somebody and really mold them and help themselves mold the or help them mold themselves into something where they can really run with it. I think it's so cool to see some of my old students out there killing it, hitting heights that I've never hit. And I know you've probably already seen some of the kids you teach, even if they hit you up and they're like, yo, Mr. Davis, look at this picture I took. That's validating. That really drives you. I want to go back to the film thing. It took me 17 minutes to say the word film out of my mouth because you're the film god. You still shoot primarily film, so we're gonna get the boring stuff out of the way first. Gear wise, what's your go to film camera? And I would say, what's the film camera from the Leica film? Because I know these Leica film cameras. They've just created such a mark in the industry from some of the top
Hmm.
names that we've seen and been inspired by, from photojournalists to really more of the artistic side and the fine art side of things. Like a film camera that is always by your side, and the like a film camera that you would say is best for beginners.
So, one camera that never leaves my side at all, and it's actually here, it's going to make a guest appearance, is my Leica M6. I've been shooting this camera since 2019, and it's by far like my favorite camera. Like, it doesn't matter what type of camera I have, that's always going to be with me. Documenting that moment. Um, a beginner like a film camera that somebody can get into, I think it can be either, like a Leica R3, because I know that some people may be used to utilizing, an SLR camera, and that may be just the easiest way to kind of get into the Leica system. Or, if they're looking to use a rangefinder and they want something that's, kind of like a starting point for them, probably would be the Leica CL, the film one. It's like
Okay.
small, it's compact. You can use a 50 millimeter or 40 millimeter with it. And I think that's like the best way to get into that rangefinder system. I particularly like shooting, rangefinder style cameras. So sometimes when people, when I'm on the streets and I'm in Newark and I have this camera and I'm asking, people to take, portraits, or if I'm doing candidates, it's not, super big and bulky that, can like stand out and, can scare somebody. And
Mhm.
sometimes, a lot of people are intimidated by the camera. It's not because that, you just have this camera and you're just wielding it, in their face to take the photographs. But sometimes people have that perception that, you may be taking something from them, And sometimes when I'm out in the streets and I'm photographing, I like to tell, the person, hey, it's okay if I can make your photograph. I like to
Mhm.
make it like a collaborative effort.
How do
Yeah.
you get handled as an insider? Being because Newark is a very insular place in a way where you can't just walk into Newark with a camera. Trust me,
Mm.
I've been out there with Dolo, and it's like I get a much different response. And it's like when you're not from a place, you might as well be waving like red lights over your head, like I'm not from here. How do you get received? I mean, do you get any pushback, or is it something where because you know the streets so intimately and you're there and you're seen, Does that affect it, or do you still have to kind of find your way in when you're photographing some of these people? Like if you go down to Broad Street, how are you navigating it?
Well, I mean, typically, I just go in there and I just take the photograph, but sometimes, if you do get, a little bit of pushback, I think, for me being here, there is an advantage to it. But I've been down to Baltimore, I've been down to Philly, and I've photographed different people, the same way I would do in Newark. And sometimes you do get those questions like, what exactly you're doing, and a lot of times, I'll just say, especially in Newark, I just want to document, this current time that we're living in here in Newark because I feel as though it's important because I feel as though that the media outlets are giving inaccurate information about what actually goes on here and people that live here. So I think that's an advantage. But if you see, the beauty in somebody that you see on the streets, and you photograph them and they make a little pushback on that, you just tell them, and just be honest. Um, that's the way that I go about making my photographs. I wouldn't just sometimes I may do like a little bit of acts of randomness just to capture a particular scene. But if I do see somebody and I capture them, it's coming out of a place where I want to honor them with the camera.
And that comes across. It's very genuine in your work and that connection. You can tell when a connection is forced or when it's not
Mhm.
really genuine. And you can really tell when somebody knows you're taking the photo. They want their photo taken. They're kind of in the moment with you. And I think that comes across in your photos like you can't explain that to somebody. That comes across like as if I'm there with you watching the process take place and I can see the interaction. And by the same token, if somebody's uncomfortable and you get those, I mean, sometimes we like that pop up on
Mhm.
them, stick a camera in the face, kind of that Gildan approach. But
Yeah.
that comfortability comes across. And I think that's what speaks about your Newark photos in particular is we talk all the time about passion and you have to shoot something you're passionate about. Your passion for Newark comes through in your images. Now, I want to go back to the film thing because I kind of want to dive into that more because not many
Mhm.
people, it's so expensive now to shoot film. I know you shoot some digital, but your heart is in film. While we're talking about digital, I do want to throw this out again. Leica has a ton of deals on the B&H site. I don't want to make this an ad, but I was just clued in. There's a lot of gear that and packages that are on the website with the SL2S, the SL2s, a lot of good deals. So if you were in the market for like a digital system, go check out the B&H site. They have some stock that is once it goes, it goes. But which of the Leica digital systems? Because I've shot with the SL2S, and when I say the Leica look, it's just the Leica look. Like Leica, just the way the cameras resolve is just different. It's on another level. What have you been drawn to in the digital Leicas that you've used, and why?
Well, for me in particular, I did own a Leica M10. I owned a Leica T. I have used the Q2, the Q3, SL2, SL3. Um, I particularly like, Leica's black and whites because it is very reminiscent of Kodak Tri-X. And I just like the fact that, whenever I do shoot like a digital camera that, I can trust that this image is going to look exactly the way that I want it to. And that, it's always going to, perform and give me the looks that I want, essentially. And it's always trusty for me, essentially, when it comes down to, shooting black and white. Um, a lot of people, they like to do a lot of, post processing, to, add a little bit more, emphasis on their images. But, I completely trust, my images, straight out of the camera when it comes down to a digital Leica. So, um, yeah.
That's the nerdy technical side of things that photographers understand, but
Hmm.
people who are either just starting out, like there's a reason when we talk about the way a camera resolves and manages light and colors and the way that an image straight out of camera can look just real. There's,
Right.
no camera can mimic the human eye. We see things in such a high dynamic range that you can't mimic that. And without having to process images and have an image just look real, especially when you're documenting reality, You want it to look as real as possible. You don't want to look in the image and be like, oh damn, that camera just threw up on the paper, or somebody
Yeah.
pushed the levels way too far. And I think for me, that's really where the system shines, is it just captures as close to what I'm seeing with my bare human naked eye, as than anything else out there. But going back to the whole film thing, we can get away from digital because we already know what digital is. But like I
Mhm.
said, not many people are shooting primarily film. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you're getting jobs as a film photographer. Like your
Yeah.
film skill set, and I'm not talking like, you know, Betty Boop from down the block is hiring you to shoot a baby shower. Like you're getting big brand jobs to
Yeah.
shoot film. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, I do happen to work with Disney a lot. And so there have been many cases to where, they want me to shoot film, whether if it's behind the scenes or if I'm actually, doing, like a main like photo, you know, shoot. Um, I just think that, understanding, like how film reacts, how it works. I just think that, it's just an amazing form within photography. It's like, you're going back to, the how pure photography was when it came down to just having like that physical, tangible item, that you can, look upon to see your images that you're creating there. So yeah, I've shot with Disney, and they've asked me to shoot black and white film or color film with them, on set, and I just absolutely love it. Film is becoming a little expensive, but I just think that if for me as a documentary photographer, right, I just think that it's important for us to archive, our images, for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, because, that we live in the digital age, where there's always a consistent development within technology, and, certain hardware or software will be outdated. But, when it comes down to, film, I can just, shoot it, develop it, archive it. I could put it in a safe, in a box, store it away, and, we can resurrect, that, 50 years from now. So, I shoot film primarily, to archive what's happening now. And I understand that, some people, they like film because of like the way it looks, that how it the chemicals are like processed. A lot of people like shooting like Portrait 400, and you get all those nice, funky colors from it. But I really feel like if you shoot film to archive what's happening now, I think it's worth the amount that it is.
Yeah, there's a romantic part of the process. And especially when you develop your own, because myself included, I don't develop my own film. When I shoot film, and I shoot film few and far between, when I shoot a roll of film, I get it back and it's to the point of like, wow, my son was 2 when I took that image. And then the next image
Hmm.
is like 4 years after that. And the next image is 3 years after that. And I'm like, wow, it took me like 7 years to shoot a roll of film. And then I'm not even developing it. But you develop your own film
Hmm.
and you teach people to develop film. So again, it's like this giving back to the community and teaching people to fall in love with the process that is what makes you a dynamic individual, and that a lot of people are just out here for themselves. And yes, you're doing it for yourself, and we all should be doing it for ourselves, but you're out there doing it for yourself while helping others do it for themselves. And I think that's such a powerful thing. Are you still doing I know you were working with the lab in Newark. Are you guys still doing that whole thing?
Well, the lab is still there. However, I'm not, currently involved at this very moment. But I still, teach people how to, shoot with film and develop, because a lot of people, they want to get into film photography, but they just have that fear of, messing up, because I paid, this much for this camera, this roll of film. I don't want to, just spend a bunch of money and not get the best results.
Why are all the prints white? Like
Right?
you
Like,
get
and I think back to, when I first started shooting film back in 2015. I went on the trip to Barbados to go see my family. I had this little I had, I had like a little point and shoot camera, and I'm going around. I'm taking like all these different photos of like my cousins. The everyday life of what's happening in Barbados. But as soon as I come, I go back, and this was back when CVS was doing like the 1 hour photo, which I hope somebody can bring that back. But I went there, I dropped it off, and then I came back an hour later, and the guy said, "Yeah, there's nothing, there's no pictures on here." So it's pretty much blank, and I definitely felt discouraged because I have this digital camera that I'm using. I'm thinking that I know everything about photography, but really I don't. And so from that small hardship, that's where I started to slow down a bit, take notes on how exactly am I setting my camera, what's the aperture, what's the shutter speed, what type of film am I using, what's the ISO, and what particular lighting environments am I in, so that way I can start to set my camera to get a clear shot. And so I know that there are many other photographers who went through I went through, and they may have that fear of jumping back in there, and then sometimes you just got to just take people by the hand and show them like, hey, like this is exactly how you do it, and this is the way that I learned. And I just like seeing photographers grow into the artists that they're meant to be, just through these lessons, and like I said, and lessons that I've learned.
Mm. Yeah, and learn the hard way when you're shooting with film, like you said. And then it's like you don't know, did I load the film wrong? Did the film never take? Or you
Right.
shoot that banger roll of film and you go to rewind it and you're like, why is there no tension? You just
Right.
know at that point, you're like, yeah, it never caught. It never caught on the sprockets. I'm just gonna catch this one. Um, what have you taken from this whole idea of really going into the corporate world? You went back into the freelance thing because it's funny. You've had like you're the perfect example of progress isn't linear. You've been all over. You were doing big commercial jobs before you even really got to where were a point of like, I'm here. Like you had some big opportunities early on when you were just a dude out there just trying to make it. And then you go up and then like I said, you went and you were working with lomography for a time. And then you
Mhm.
come back and it's like you're doing the teaching thing and you're doing the freelance thing and getting big jobs. What has been the biggest teacher to you and the biggest piece of advice that you can give to people who think that number one, progress is linear, and number two, that they should be going any particular direction with photography? What would you say to those people?
Well, I just think that I'm a person who loves photography, everything about it. And I just feel as that, yes, I do enjoy the process of taking photographs, and I may like this particular genre, but it's good to know, it's good to learn about every aspect of photography. So, I was working at Lomography as an account manager, and I'm understanding, how, businesses, work when it comes down to, buying and selling film. I'm already, I have my feet to the ground, my ears to the streets about, what are people shooting nowadays? What are people gravitating to? And having that knowledge there, is good because now like the behind the scenes of how a business operates when it comes down to supply and demand. Because there was at one point, color film was super hot, and a lot of companies weren't selling a lot of color film because it was out of stock. And just understanding that business aspect and how long it takes and how much it takes to produce celluloid film. um I just think that you have to be a Swiss Army knife when it comes down to being a photographer. That you just
Definitely.
have to you just have to do more than just take a photograph. I already knew early on that I have to do multiple things, when it comes down to being a photographer. Some people, they want to learn how to, um, you know, pretty much, shoot film, and I went about that, and I taught people independently before I was a professor, before, I was on any other platform. Um, or you may have a particular style of photography, when it comes down to photographing, clothing and models and all those other things, right? Because it was at a point where, I was shooting for FUBU, you know, and even just learning, a little bit of video. I've shot commercials for Puma, essentially.
Mm.
So I just think that as you grow as a photographer, you're just going to understand that, okay, I want to do these things. Okay, well, how exactly do I get there? Essentially. So you have to learn, each and every different aspect and try to, work your way through there and not just be, quote unquote, like a one trick pony, essentially.
Mm.
So I think it's good, if you love a craft, you're gonna study each and every aspect of it.
You know, it's funny. I forgot about your whole video past, and I
Hmm.
saw you post something recently, some video clips, and I'm like, okay, he's taking that jump because from film to film, actual still film to film as in video
Hmm.
is a big jump. I mean, not really in a creative sense. It's kind of just you're telling a moving story versus an image at a time. But from a technological standpoint, it's a big jump. And then I'm like, wait, hold on, Dolo, he was doing video way back. Like again,
Hmm.
early on, you were doing big video projects, and then just
Yeah.
seeing that recently, it kind of made me remember that. I'm like, how come there's been that gap, man? How come you haven't made that jump? I mean, it's a natural transition, especially now. We're in such a hybrid world where
Yeah.
photographers have to be videographers. There's jobs that are going to the person that does both rather than the person that does one really well. So, are you getting back into? Was that a teaser? Are you letting us know that you're going to be out shooting more
Yeah.
video?
Yeah, absolutely. Because in the past, I've shot a lot of music videos, I've shot different commercials, been on MTV, VH1, billboards, all that different stuff, and so I just felt, at that point in my life, that I wanted to focus more on photography and the documentary aspect. It's because, like, yeah, I go from this big commercial world where I'm doing all these big projects to now working on things I feel as though that are important. So even now, as I'm getting back into, video or in film, that I want to utilize that craft to essentially, tell the stories that I'm doing now, but just put another video aspect to it. So still staying on, my path of authenticity, documenting new work and telling these stories. Now I want to start bringing, those skills in video and, implementing that in, other projects.
It's interesting. You kind of in my head, I'm wondering. I'm like, you know, you've done the celebrity stuff, you've done the big name stuff, and in my head, I'm like, you know, anybody who's done it knows that all that glitters isn't gold. And you see it from the outside, and everybody thinks they want to shoot all that stuff. And then you shoot it, and you're like, number one, these people are just regular people. And not only
Absolutely.
that, but a lot of it's like they say, don't meet your heroes. You end up shooting somebody and meeting somebody, and you're like, wow, that person was a jerk, or like, I would never want to work with them again. And then when you start shooting stuff that you're passionate about, and it becomes less about, because I feel like we all love the flex. Everybody loves the flex. It's embedded in
Mhm.
us. And today's current culture has only made it more so, where the flex is paying off. The flex is getting you views, it's getting you clicks, it's getting you engagement. But when you go back from the flex, it's like, do you feel good about it? Or do you feel good about the genuine work? There's words that keep coming up that you're saying today, how genuine and authentic and all this stuff is like what you want to do. So it was interesting to hear you say that because in my head, I'm like, I'm not going to speak for him, but I'm thinking like, yeah, you've seen the other side of the mountain. And I feel like for the majority of people that go to that side, some people love it, right? And some people they're always going to love that. But for a lot of people, and this is why we vibe, is that we've been there, and then we always came back home to what we know and what we're passionate about, and our true being. Us as photographers, we want to help people. We want to feel good. We want to shoot stuff that is authentic and not get caught up in the clicks and the views and all that other stuff. And I think seeing people impacted by your work is way better than a picture you post of a celebrity that gets a million clicks. And what does it do? People, what do I need to see a bunch of fire emojis in the comment section? No, I don't need to see that. But one person reaching out like, hey, I just want to let you know that like I've been taking the pictures a lot more because you've inspired me. that thing right there. You know, I went to a conference a couple years ago, and there was a big YouTuber, and he put it all in perspective. And he's like, you know, we everybody has the game all screwed up now. We're like, oh, unless I have 200,000 followers or this many likes and all this, it doesn't mean anything. He's like, there's 200 people in this room right now, right? And he's like, it's standing room only, people up against the walls. Now, if you convert that to likes, how many people in this room genuinely raise your hand if you think 200 likes is a lot of likes for a post? And nobody, you know, maybe three, four hands went up. But he's like, but then 200 people, how many people, if I said it would, I could fill this room, standing room only, would think that that's impressive? And everybody raised their hand. And it kind of puts this whole thing in perspective. And again, we're going to move into some images, but just before we go into images, I think that's such a great nugget of information to kind of plug up here for our viewers and our listeners to really focus on being your authentic self. Because that's everything you're saying has drawn back to that. No matter what you're doing, it's this mantra of you're, like you said, keep going. You know, that's a big thing. You always see you posting it, keep going, don't give up. You know, keep on the path and really stay true to yourself.
Yeah, that's the most important thing is that you have to keep going. You have to stay consistent, you know. Like you're allowed to have those days where, you know, you may feel as though that you may not be progressing, right? And a lot of times people may feel as though that they're going in circles essentially, right? But it's really at times it's an upward spiral. Like you're still progressing, you're still moving up, but you may not see it that way, you know. So you're allowed to, you know, have those days where you're not feeling inspired or encouraged because guess what? That next day you might, you know, create your best work, you know. So it's important just to keep going, you know, and stay consistent, you know. And, you know, sometimes, you know, social media, you know, you see other people, you know, they may be getting these accolades or they may be getting these positions, right? It's like you just have to stay patient because when it's your time, it's your time. Because right now it may be this person's time, but guess what? Tomorrow, the next day, next week, next month, it may just be your time. You just have to be patient. You have to just consistently just keep doing what fulfills you and what you're passionate about.
Yeah,
And you'll get
you
to where
can't
you need
rush
to go.
success. Yeah, no, that's a
You can't.
great way to look at it. And if you're like me, your life is in a downward spiral constantly. But hey, I'm still moving, baby. We're gonna get into some images here. Man, I should have wore the shiesty on the
Yeah,
interview. Uh,
definitely should.
we're gonna talk about some images now. Take me through these. Tell me a little bit about each image we look through.
Well, so this is Kayla here, right? So this is at a I want to say like an artist hub in Newark. So this is on Halsey Street, and this is Black Swan Espresso. It's one of my favorite coffee shops, if not one of the best coffee shops in Newark. There's plenty others as well, but I just happened to go in, you know, say hi to the staff, you know how I normally do and get my coffee, and I see Kayla there. She has on this neon green shiesty, and she's on like on a Zoom call, and I'm just like. And I'm all right. I'm like, did she really just put on, you know, the ski mask, you know, for a meeting? And I, you know, and you know, me and Kayla, we go back, and I was just like, man, like that was just so crazy. Like that was like awesome. Like wow, you know. And so, you know, we just had, you know, like a good conversation, and just in this, you know, this particular moment, you know, I just wanted to just photograph her, you know, while she's just in this mask. You know, this is just us connecting, you know, as friends, as Newarkers, and you know, I just wanted to just showcase just that intimate moment. You know, that we were just, you know, having this conversation after she, you know, got that meeting with her mask on. So
Did you know her before, or was this someone that
yeah,
you are? Okay,
yeah,
so you
yeah, I knew her before,
okay.
but
I
it's
love
just
that.
like you know, it's like I may have not seen her in a while, but it's just like, you know, just friends, just like reconnecting and just catching up.
I love it. I love the expression here. This is probably my favorite image from the set you sent over, just because it's so hard to take a posed portrait and have an expression so impactful come through. Like when we talk
Mm,
about portraiture, nine times out of ten, it's the look. It's how the moment you capture that really, even beyond the lighting. I mean, window light's always going to reign supreme for me. Black and white, again, black and white plus window light. It's a combination made to, you know, for amazing image, but it's the expression here. There's just something
Mm,
in the eye contact and the gesture and everything. It's just, I don't know, this image is everything.
yeah, and like for me, I make it a collaborative effort, and a lot of times, I won't tell, the person who I'm photographing, to pose or do something that feels unnatural to them. It's just like whenever you photograph somebody, just let them, be them essentially, and if they want to collaborate, they say, hey, I want to do this, I want to do some other pose, and it's like, okay, no, I'll let you do what you got to do, and then, I'll still go ahead and take the photos.
Authenticity.
Mhm. Yeah. So this next photograph, I felt like I was like nearly about to cry, from seeing this particular photograph because if you are from Newark, you're familiar with the Muslim brothers who have carts. Normally you'll see them on Broader Market. You'll normally hear them say, look good, smell good. And so I was on a shoot for this magazine that's out in Tulsa called Greenwood Avenue, and the premise of that magazine is for them to go around to different cities um, and states to document and write stories about other cities that kind of are showcase the essence of Black Wall Street that was in Tulsa. And so as we're going to these different businesses on Halsey Street, which was like, Black Business Row, I happened to see this young brother. He was outside on the street and he was selling his own oils. And I'm still midway in the shoot, but then I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, wait, no, we need to grab this guy like immediately because if I can put Newark into like one particular picture, I think that this would be it. Like if you know about Newark, you know about the fragrances that the Muslim brothers that they sell. That these are like staples within the community. I particularly like to have this fragrance called Black Butter, and it smells amazing. These are all like homemade. And so just photographing this, it just brought me all back to just like remembering, the first time that, I had a oil fragrance, in Newark. And I'm just like, yeah, like this is Newark here. Like this is like a very niche kind of thing. Like if it's like if you know, essentially. But pretty much that this is just like a part of the culture that's in Newark, and I felt this. I need to document that, and like I just felt very emotional. Like after seeing that photograph, I'm just like, man, like this is what I want to embody when anytime I'm going out to photograph Newark and to showcase what exactly is happening here and what's the culture like.
I love that. It's that personal touch to where it means something to you and it also means something to, like you said, you put it perfectly. And if you know, you know. And it's like, if you know, you know. And if you don't know about this image, if this image doesn't say anything to you, then you're not the intended viewer. And I think that's so important. Like, we don't need to make images for everyone. We need to make images in a certain sense. Like, yeah, there is imagery out there that is for mass consumption, but there are certain images where it's like, if you know why this image is important, why this image is impactful, then this image is for you.
Right. And I like to think about my one of my mentors, Jules Allen. He says he likes to work from the inside out. So there are some things that you may not pick up on because you may not understand it, from a culture perspective. But it's like if you
Mhm.
know, it's like yeah, then you know. So this is really just like a personal photo, like for me and for people who are from Newark. Like you
Mm.
understand what this is, you know what it smells like, you know you can hear a brother on the street saying, look good, smell good.
This image takes me back to a party at Montclair State University mixing Egyptian musk oil in cocoa butter. It's just like, so, like you said, some images you could smell. I smell this one.
Yeah, right. So this image, so this was back in 2023. So if you're around, New York, maybe the Midwest, or just anywhere on the East Coast, we experience, the Canadian wildfires and the smoke. right? And you know, oftentimes, we see it on the news, we see it on social media, but it's like when it's right at your front door, it hits a certain way. And so I remember the first day that we experienced that, like that heavy, like fiery, that woodsy kind of smoke that was in the air. I was at the moment that it happened, I was actually at the college and I was teaching my students. We were going out to photograph, our lessons. And as we're outside, I'm like, wow, like smoke is kind of heavy, and I'm feeling a little like woozy a bit. So I just told the students like, yeah, let's go on inside. We may have to break early for today. I want you all to get inside safely. But the following day, I went outside and I'm seeing that, the entire city is just covered in this orange and yellow smoke, this mist, and I was like, you know what? Like, let me see how the people in Newark are reacting to this. Are people masked up? Or like, is there a bunch of panic outside? Like, let me just go outside and investigate. And sure enough, there were some people who had masks, and there were some people who just, were just out and about. And they say, yeah, I've heard people say, I smoke too many cigarettes, or I smoke too much weed to be affected by this. And I'm like, no, like this is very dangerous. I had on my mask essentially, and I was like, like I just got to document like what's happening outside. And so as I'm going around, photographing people, there's a gentleman who had a newspaper, and he has like the newspaper, covered across his face, trying to, I guess block the smoke, but he's still inhaling it. And then this woman, as I'm walking, she's like crossing the street, and then I'm crossing the street, and then she yells back, she's like, "Hey, like, you take my picture?" And I was like, "Sure." And then she just started doing all these different poses, as like we're, in New York, like we're on the streets, or like we're, on the runway. She's like doing all these different, poses. And I was just like, wow, even though in this environment, where people's health are, is being affected, that, there's some type of resilience that's happening there. Even though there's chaos and there's catastrophe happening outside, that, I'm still going to try to enjoy my life, regardless of what exactly is happening. And so I just look at this as just resilience, amongst all the chaos that may be happening outside.
I love that. And the story behind it. And I love the environmental portraiture aspect of, you see rainbow in the background there. And again, we talked
Yeah.
about it earlier, how much Newark has changed over the years, and every place really. I mean, document your surroundings, not just the people, but I think I would love to see more environmental portraiture where take
Hmm.
off the 85 or the 135, put on a 24, a 28, a 35, and capture environment, because it's these little things like this where one day rainbow is going to be gone, or maybe not. I don't know. Rainbow might
Yeah.
survive anything.
Well, I can tell you, from living here in Newark, that storefront has changed so many times. It was Jimmy Jazz at one point.
Mm,
It was a uniform store for kids, but now it's a rainbow,
mm,
so things are consistently changing, right? And what I tell people, like, even when you're going out to photograph, even if you've seen this particular scene, 1,000 times, there's always something that's going to be different here. Like, even like all the way back towards the left, you may not be able to see it, but that was once a Dr. J's, and that was, like a very prominent store in the downtown area. Mayor Ras Baraka, he used to shop there. I know so many other people who bought clothing from there. But now it's a JD Sports, and a lot of people miss that iconic Dr. J sign that was on the side.
mhm.
So there are things that are consistently changing, right? Within your city and within different cultural aspects of a particular town. So it's important that you document what's happening now because things change.
Yeah, that's a great point. And even if it is just the storefront, document it. You never know when that picture might have some importance.
Right. And even just seeing, this couple here, I just saw them, just stopped on the road, and I was just like, it's a hot, bright summer day, they just embodied, look of just summer love. And so right there, immediately as I saw them there, I just pulled out my camera and I just start photographing because, I'm not sure if they're getting ready to, go off and just, go about their day. But the woman in the front, she started posing, and then her boyfriend, he pretty much got like all into it. Like he was like, let me take off the hat, and let me just do all these. He did like a kissy pose to like her face. You could just see that he really is in love with her. And then he was like, all right, well, let me just go ahead and just like grab your neck and just whisper in your ear.
I
But
love
it's
that.
just like just showing just like that summer love, and just that love that people have for each other just in Newark.
Mhm.
And in this image, I believe this is also 2023. There were two firefighters who, sadly lost their lives while battling a fire at Port Elizabeth. It was like a ship fire, and pretty much, firefighters, they normally put their lives on the line to put out, fires and to, stop any, other, damages to whether it's housing or, anywhere else. And so this was a funeral for one of the firefighters at the Sacred Heart Basilica in North Newark. And I just wanted to showcase just like how firefighters in Newark are honoring, one of their own fallen. And so I just saw like this particular line, um, this leading line that was going down, as the firefighters were giving like their final salutes as the casket was going by. And I was just like, wow, like I just want to show like that, showcase that strength and that solidarity between, firefighters in Newark and all across New Jersey who came, to give their respects. It was like this leading line, going from, the firefighter on the right, all the way down to where you see the truck, and it's also going up.
And of course, you work it in with the power lines because you're a photographer at heart, and you just see
Right.
it. Like I love that you put them into that space. So it's just the micro composition for me takes it to another level.
Right. And this could have been, photographed in different ways. I've tried to photograph it, eye level. But essentially, I wanted to showcase, that, these gentlemen are, they're heroes.
Mm.
And what better way to give them, that particular look by, just kind of kneeling down and just showing them like that strength. You get that hero shot.
Yeah.
And that's
Pro
something I
tip
just
right
wanted,
there.
right. And that's something I wanted to, embody in there. This is definitely one of my favorite photographs. Funny enough, I was coming back from photographing an LSI event, so Leica Society International, event at the Leica headquarters in Teaneck, New Jersey. And so after I finished that shoot, my mentor, Brian Price, he had reached out to me and said, "Hey, there's an event going on at the Newark Museum, and this is photographer, she's showcasing her work, and I think that, you should come out to the opening." And I was like, sure, why not? Coming back, I'm a little tired. It was a little, it was a long day, but I said, I'm like, all right, let me just, get my camera ready, because I may want to like photograph what's happening, the events that are happening inside. And so, as I'm walking towards the entrance, I see this couple, walk out the museum, and I'm like not thinking anything of. I'm like, they're just walking out, and I'm about to go about my day. But this gentleman here, he plops up his girlfriend, on the side of the museum, and then they just started making out, and I was just like, wow, like this is like, I'm like, this is an amazing shot. And I was like, I want to showcase like that love, or just like this particular moment in time that's happening. And so literally, I only took as I'm walking, I took two shots. Like this is not like pose or anything. Like this is like really a candid moment that I just wanted to just capture. Just showcasing like as I said before, like but the gentleman and the woman on the moped. I just want to showcase that love and that love that people have for each other in Newark. And so I literally only took two shots, and this was the second shot. And so I didn't want to disturb that moment or interfere with what they were doing essentially. So and they didn't hear anything. I used my M10, and super silent, so they couldn't really hear anything there. I didn't want to interrupt at all. So, but I just wanted to showcase that beautiful moment in time.
Did you go up to them after and let them know, or you just kept it moving?
No, I just kept it moving because a lot of times, like I want to be a fly on the wall for a
Mhm.
lot of the things that are happening, in the moments that I feel like that are special. And sometimes, you don't want to really interfere with somebody's day. So I just let them have their moment, because they were really into it.
Mhm.
They're, giving each other a nice kiss. So I was like, I don't want to disturb that particular moment. So, I just decided, okay, take the photograph and then I'm gonna just go about my day.
I love that.
And in this particular photograph, I just like showcasing the innocence in Newark. Um, and I just remember, being a young student, waiting for that 31 bus at this exact stop, ready to go home. And she was just like just by herself. She was just like wandering off, and I can only imagine like what she may have been thinking about. Maybe the homework that she may have to do when she gets home, or perhaps what she wants to do in the future. Um, and even just like that yes that's in the background, it's just like sometimes in life you'll get a thousand no's, but when you get that one yes,
I love that. Even a
sky's
photo
the
like
limit.
this, like it makes us all dreamers. And
Yeah.
again, it's an if you know you know kind of moment again where some people look at this and they're like, okay, well, what am I looking at? What's the significance? And other people look at it and they're like, yeah, I want to know what she's thinking. She could be
Mhm.
having a pensive day. She could have just had something really bad happen that she's reflecting, or I think that curiosity and that wonder, that's what makes street photography so powerful in so many ways, because you don't have to know what's going on in an image. Just an image making you think, making you wonder, is it served its purpose at that point.
Right. That's what I love about photography because I can place something, like in a frame on a wall, but I can interpret it some type, I can put the interpretation, right there and what exactly is happening in this photograph. But when people, have their own imaginations going on, that's what makes, photography, great, essentially, because
Yeah.
people can put themselves in that particular photograph, or, they can create their own type of narrative. Um, so this particular photograph happened in June of last year. And there was a storefront in Newark called Brown Mill. And so they just finished having their annual block party. And normally it's like a huge turnout. You get people from all over, people who fly in into Newark to, come to this particular block party. And it's a really, great event. I feel like everybody should know about that and should, come out and support. But then I saw, this father, and son, they both had on cowboy hats, and I was just like, wow, like, you don't normally see, people in Newark, wearing cowboy boots or even a cowboy hat. And so I was like, I walked up to the gentleman, and asked, it's okay if I can, make a photograph of you and your son. I really like, the cowboy hats. And then I looked down and I was just like, wow, like they both have on cowboy boots, and I just thought, as I'm taking, the photographs, you know, the the father, put his son kind of like in between them. And then I just noticed that little detail of the cowboy boots. And I was just like, wow, right? It's just like that relationship between, a father and a son, and, how, you know, a son looks up to his father and how, he wants to be just like him. So just seeing that, that role model, with that role model role within this photograph just made it just powerful for me.
Mm, definitely. That's Brian Branch Price vibes right there.
Right. And yeah, Brian. Yeah, Brian's character. I love that guy. Whoopi Goldberg. So this is so I'm gonna take you way back, right? So I want to say maybe 2015 or 2016. I was doing some photo work for this sneaker store that was in South Orange, right off of South Orange Avenue called C&B Kicks. And a gentleman had came in and said, "Hey, like I'm looking for like some kind of special sneaker, because this store was selling all the types of rare Jordans, Nikes, you name it." And he says, "Yeah, I want to, find something special because I'm getting ready to go to Whoopi Goldberg's house." And come to find out, he was her assistant.
Mm.
And I was like, wow, like I didn't even know like Whoopi Goldberg, lived in Jersey. So apparently she lives in West Orange. And so fast forward, I'm already working with Disney, and the View is also with, within the Disney umbrella. So I'm like, okay, well, there's going to be some way or some alignment of when I'm going to bump into Whoopi Goldberg, right? So last year I got hired by this education foundation to document the event, but then also I had to follow Whoopi Goldberg around. And within that same month, the following week, I had to DJ for a shoot for The View, which is funny. Yeah, not, a lot of people don't know that, I do dabble into music, but pretty much the following week, I was getting ready to see Whoopi Goldberg again. And so, as the event is happening, photographing Whoopi Goldberg, and then we're kind of just connecting in a sense. We're just building some rapport. And I said, hey, do you know such and such who works at Disney? That I'm actually supposed to be DJing that next week or whatever. And then like we're just building this rapport about what exactly she wants to hear and all these different things. And then, I was just able just to capture this particular moment that's here. And then that same story about me meeting her assistant at the sneaker store, that following week, I see him again, and Whoopi was like, "Hey, like," she kind of just like brought him over. She's like, "Hey, like, this is the guy I was telling you about who gave you that story about you going to the store and buying the sneakers for that event or whatever." So it's like this, like, I don't know, like this 360 moment, like where things was just aligned. Because I was like, man, like this guy's about to meet Whoopi Goldberg. I'm like, that's pretty cool. And now I'm over here, I'm photographing her, and I'm also taking her music requests,
I love that.
which is like insane. So like, me and Whoopi, we just like locked in for a minute. So I just thought that, I just think about when I look at this picture, right? People have their own thoughts about Whoopi. They may have seen her in a movie. They still may watch the show, but in this particular photograph, I just look at that particular moment as that intimate moment that I had with her. And when I did showcase this photograph, a lot of people say, you kind of like humanized her. It's just like, yes, she's a human being, but people look at her as just like this major star. She has she's an EGOT, essentially, Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and then a Tony, and I was just like, this was just like a connection of just between two people, just, you know, re, you know, reconnecting and talking about music and all other things.
Yeah, I like that human aspect of photography. Final image here. This is a great shot, man.
Right. What I like about shooting in Newark, right? Because even going back to the conversation about photographing in New York. So a lot of times, right, if you're on the outskirts of New York City and you go into photograph, a lot of times you will find, different moments that may kind of look like this, right? But I just think that, when you're seeing this, outside the scope of New York City, or just any particular kind of special moment that may not happen in a particular place, I feel like it's very special. Sometimes you may be missing out on certain moments by not being in your hometown, or you may be missing out certain stories. But this happened, in the heart of Newark on Broad and Market. And so I just saw this guy, right? He was just walking through Military Park with this cross, with wheels, and he's just going around just like walking with it, right? And I'm just like, this is not, an everyday thing that's happening here in Newark. And I want to photograph that. But the backstory was that this guy, he's from Texas, right? And he takes this particular cross, and he travels. He's going to travel to all 50 states with this cross. He's going out and he's talking to people about the Bible, Christianity, and all those different things, right? And I just think that for this to happen in Newark, it's just like pretty odd, and definitely. there were different moments where, I photographed him, carrying the cross, but I was just like, like I kind of want to anticipate this moment, and I want to prepare myself as he's coming across, the busiest intersection here in Newark. And so, as he's walking, I'm just like waiting in position. I'm like right in the middle, and then I just captured just a few frames. And I was just like, yeah, like this is it.
I love that. And that backstory helps. I thought it when I first looked at the image, I'm like, one of those religious parades or one of those religious days. And I'm like, and the fact that it's an everyday, it's just a regular day and
Right,
he's, there, that kind of stands out to me. It's like when people post pictures and it's like, wow, you got a crazy person at Comic-Con. Wow, that's so unique. But then when you see, you know,
right,
a crazy person, someone dressed in like, really, really, really crazy getup or a costume and is not on Halloween and it's not at Comic-Con, then you're like, okay, this is a moment. Like you're not just photographing someone cosplaying at an event where everyone's cosplaying. And I think that whole aspect of it, that it's just an everyday moment. And again, compositionally, this is just so well composed. The layering, how you have, the frame is filled as if you just said, hey, you stand here, and I'll walk at the same time. Like you don't get those moments often in street
right.
photography. And it's like usually it's the opposite. When everybody is in their position, he's off to the right and he has, I mean, if the buildings are behind him, the cross doesn't stand out as well. The fact that
Mhm.
everybody's in the right spot, and like this is just that serendipity of street that you can't mimic. It just has to happen.
Right. And even sometimes you have to predict that things are going to happen this way, right?
Mm.
Like even, it sometimes, if you predict something like it may not actually happen over, but you just have to see it before it actually happens. And I just think that, that's probably like one of the greatest things about, street photographers that, we can see things before they happen, or we can predict that, this particular thing is going to happen. And it's funny because even on this same day as I saw this guy just, randomly crossing the street with his cross, when I went to the Ironbound section in Newark, I saw these two gentlemen like they just had a random mattress on top of their heads as like they're just carrying it. It's just like, I just made that relation to, things that we find comfort in, right? Some people find comfort in their religion and some people find comfort, within their bed, within their mattress. But it's just predicting those particular moments, and just
Yeah,
capturing it when it happens.
got to stay ahead of the game.
Hmm.
Christopher Davis, Dolo Photo. Tell us where we can keep up with your work, find more about your goings on, Instagram, website. Hit the people with it.
Right. So I am on socials as Dolo underscore photo. So that's DOLO underscore FOTO. If you want to look at my portfolio, a little bit about my background, there's also a landing video that's on my website. It is www.chrisdavis.co. Now, Chris is not spelled like the traditional Chris. So it's www.CHRYSDAVIS.co. Okay. And then that's where you
Awesome.
can find, majority of my work, my portfolio. But let's connect on socials. And if you have any questions for me, when it comes to either film or if you just want to just have a conversation about, street photography or what you should be doing now, feel free to reach out. I want to be a resource for everybody to learn and to elevate, as photographers.
Awesome. Dolo, great inspiration as always. I want to thank you again. Of course, thank Leica for hosting this event. We'll get those website and social dropped into the YouTube so you guys can have an easy way to find that, access it. But huge thank you to all of our viewers who are tuning in. Find your inspiration, be genuine, be your authentic self, as Dolo said here today. But that is all we have for you for now. Another edition of the B&H Event Space. Leica stories in the books. Catch y'all next time.